Hey folks, it's your buddy Mike Messier. I thought I'd do something a little bit different. Documentary, Mike's Instant Movie Review, part one of Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV. So I've been hearing a lot about this. Actually, it all came together very quickly. I've heard about this story, probably like a lot of you folks, for the last 6 or 7 years. And, you know, here it is. This documentary pops up on Max. I saw, I believe the guy's name is Dan Schneider, was twittering, Twitter, whatever the fucking, and I'm like, oh boy, I better watch this documentary. I do have the Max app. I've been enjoying it. I watch, Curb Your Enthusiasm and some other documentaries, and 90 Day Fiance, I have to say, I got into. So here I am. And I wasn't sure how long of a piece this was, this Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV. And rather than kind of watch it on my secondary laptop that I often have on while I'm doing other stuff on my main computer, I like to multitask. I like to entertain myself while I'm doing stuff. I said, no, I'm going to actually concentrate on this one because I know that a lot of this documentary is going to be footage-based, evidence, so to speak. And I should watch this on a nice TV. So I settled in, I watched this, and I watched part one. And I'm going to watch the rest of the series, maybe all in one shot tonight, maybe over the next few days. Disturbing stuff. As far as I know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you will, has this Dan Schneider individual been convicted? In the first part, we find out that he had an out-of-court settlement, I believe, or maybe Nickelodeon did, for that first series, and the two women writers who ended up suing him, and I'm glad they did. And but as one of the woman writers, basically she's saying that she lost her career because of this, because he told her that, if you mess with me, I'll blackball you. And she messed with him and sued and settled out of court, but she apparently has not been able to work as a writer in Hollywood since, which is sad. And has this guy been convicted? I wish, I guess we'll find out. Or I'll find out, because I'm going to continue to watch the series. But the last time I heard, he's kind of just free to do whatever he wants, and from what I heard, he's still producing stuff. But maybe I'm missing some twists and turns, because I don't read the daily newspaper or whatever the hell people get their information from. Sometimes I miss out on stuff. And a lot of things that I missed out on in childhood, apparently, because for me, Nickelodeon was not really a go-to thing. I do remember fondly Double Dare. I remember something called Family Double Dare. I remember that show, You Can't Do That on Television, and all that stuff. But I don't remember some of these other programs. For instance, I had no idea that Amanda Bynes had her own TV show. That was all new to me. I knew who she was. I knew that she was like the thing for a minute. There was kind of this era when you had like the Miley Cyrus as Hannah Montana. I knew about that. You had Amanda Bynes. There was like kind of this little cluster of, not too many, but there was several of these young women who were, young teen actresses that all had big followings. And some of them seemed to start on Nickelodeon, and then they would get a music career going or whatever the fuck. And I basically remember God damn it. I remember Amanda Bynes being part of that. I just don't like this camera angle today, for Christ's sakes. Anyway, I'm not feeling myself today. I'm not feeling good, okay? So what else? So this whole thing is sad, and it's corrupt. And I think what happens with these documentaries, sometimes we say, oh, well, this was back in the 90s. We didn't have... Back in the 2000s, we didn't know. I don't know, folks. That type of excuse is running thin, because every generation seems to use that same excuse. Well, back in the 50s, we didn't consider people human beings. Like every fucking generation waves the, well, this was 20 years ago, or this, and it's getting thin, that perpetual excuse for everything. Well, this was 2020. How could you expect us to know any better? I mean, at some point, the 1990s were not some caveman-esque era. I mean, maybe they were, but I don't know. It's just kind of sad to me that these things could happen, specifically when Schneider apparently is telling this female writer, first of all, they're giving the two women writers, making them split a salary. That's pretty audacious, you know, and I don't think that's something you can just wave the flag and say, well, it was the 1990s. No, that was really a ballsy move in the most negative of ballsiness, to do that. And just crazy. So, and then the part which is not to say the highlight, but the saddest part of this documentary is when the women are kind of recalling this situation where they claim that Schneider made one of the women writers do some pitch for a skit, as if she was being fornicated from the backside as she's giving this pitch. Okay, so it's kind of like, wow, this Schneider guy really, you know, and it's really a power play. And not to bring everything back to wrestling, but I mean, there's so much material there with the WWE and their recent issues, you know, for a deep dive documentary on the corruption of Vince McMahon and the things that he did to women, allegedly, which are much, even more beyond the Schneider individual. I remember the guy from the sitcom Head of the Class. If anything, with the first part of the doc, not that they really needed to, it did seem like there was some key footage that was kind of missing for it, and maybe that's because Nickelodeon didn't want to participate in this documentary, so we don't necessarily see some of the most incriminating footage. For instance, there's this scene apparently that Schneider set up where he and a young Ariana Grande are in a not a bathtub, but a hot tub together, and Schneider is fully clothed. Was it Ariana, or was it? I think it was Bynes. I'm sorry, Ariana. It was Amanda Bynes. Is in a bathing suit, and Schneider's in there fully clothed. It looked like they had some type of B camera or behind the scenes footage of that. It didn't look like that was what was aired on television. So I guess Nickelodeon, in an attempt to cover their ass, good luck, folks, did not want to release that footage. It's interesting when networks or anybody is involved in some type of documentary where you know they're going to get you. You know what I mean? It seems like the move is, well, we don't have any comment, or we, you know, deny everything, or we won't participate. I would say that if you saw this documentary, I believe it was called Hillsong, about this corrupt Australian church, where one of the guys that was basically kind of corrupted and corrupt himself and corrupting others, this renounced pastor guy, he took part in the documentary. Like he spoke, and he took some blame for his actions, and he also shared some of the blame with the higher ups and so forth. Oh my God. So I think that if you, whoever you are, or me, is ever kind of going to be tormented in a documentary, probably the best thing to do is to participate, because at least you show some, if you have erred, you show some contriteness. If you've made amends, or tried to at least, it shows that, and it gives you your chance to tell your side of the story. And I think that with a lot of this stuff, a lot of people who grew up on Nickelodeon, and like I say, I honestly can say that I didn't, but if you grew up watching all these shows, that's that and all this crap, then you're probably having that V8 moment. Oh, why, you know, how did I not see it? Because when you see these images of young Ariana Grande, and I didn't even know that she was on this network, okay? I just thought she was a singer who was known for her singing and her Pete Davidson singing and all that. But when you see this young Ariana Grande in these very peculiar situations, dousing herself with a water from a water bottle as she's kind of leaning back on a bed, And you see these other young actresses, very young, as in younger than 15 or 16. I mean, we're talking 13, 12. I mean, horrible how young these girls were. And you see all these things with, as the documentary says, young people, mostly girls, but sometimes boys, getting various liquids kind of spewed in their faces, so to speak. And that's like the punchline of a lot of jokes. And, you know, yes, there is a point where, hey, look, you know, is a banana just a banana, or is it a phallic symbol of some kind? So I get that in sometimes, you know, we look for things that aren't there, but I think there's clearly a pattern with a lot of these things that were on Nickelodeon, Ariana Grande with the potatoes squeezing and so forth. There's such a pattern there that you could, unless you were a total fucking idiot, how could you not see all these illusions and visuals? And then part of me watching this documentary, and once again, I'll give myself a little bit of a let go here. I really didn't watch these shows. I didn't watch That's That. I didn't watch the Amanda Bynes show. You know what I mean? So, but I'm wondering, how come the audience, even back then, yes, pre-internet, although the internet was around, I'd say when a good deal of these shows were playing, but maybe pre-social media, but even still, I mean, there was what you would call the urban legends, and people would just talk and so forth. And I'm kind of surprised that the world of the consumer, the audience, didn't catch on to this stuff sooner. Or maybe people were, but they just didn't have the voice, the bigger voice to kind of speak up and say, hey, how come all these girls are getting these liquids spewed at them? How come all these jokes are ending in this way? How come this, you know, 30 or 40-year-old producer guy, Schneider's in a hot tub with a 13 or 14-year-old young woman? So there you go, folks. So I don't know. I think mostly it comes down to, you know, whenever there's guilt in these situations, or wherever there's blame to point a finger on, it's kind of how much do you point the finger at the corrupt individual, in this case Schneider, and how much do you kind of point other fingers at other kind of co-conspirators? And in that case, well, who do you mean, Mike? I'd say that the other writers on this guy's writing teams, especially the male writers who kind of stood by or sat by and watched their female colleagues get harassed and abused. And granted, those guys were probably just as afraid of Schneider as these women were, you know. And the network executives, I believe it was Bynes who had a character, was it Miss Patricia Taint? I mean, they went into that at length. I mean, but once again, the audience or the TV critics never caught on to this stuff. Or maybe it's because like this, the TV critics weren't paying much attention to these programs because they were on a kids network. So similar, once again, to the world of wrestling with WWE, where there has been accusations for 40 years now against Vince McMahon of sexual misconduct to various degrees. Well, how come Vince McMahon, until 2 years ago, nobody heard about a lot of this stuff, or a lot of people didn't? Well, because it's the world of wrestling and it's not taken seriously. And I see a parallel here with this Amanda Bynes stuff and this Dan Schneider stuff more specifically. It seems like the world of kids television was not taken seriously, which is really a shame, because if you put some fucking common sense into it, if these are the programs that the young people are watching, well, these young people become old people, or they become middle-aged people, and they become parents. So a whole generation has been warped in the image of these horrible, god-awful programs. So when you think about, young women parading themselves in various states of undress on Instagram, and young men becoming simps and spending so much time pleasuring themselves to OnlyFans models and so forth, and sex dolls, and all this disgusting perversion in our society, you can blame it all on Dan Schneider and Nickelodeon, now can't we? You can judge for yourself how much I'm joking. How about that? So, in any event, it's really a shame. It's really sad. It's really sick. I don't know what else to say. I'm trying to think if I have any more deep thoughts. Once again, this was like, the tragedy, the secret right in front of us, right? And like I said, I didn't watch a lot of these shows. And if I did, I probably wouldn't have been much more the wiser than the most of you fine folks who did watch these shows. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just watch stuff, and even if you kind of notice something like, oh wow, they had that kind of camera angle or that punchline with that goop or whatever, and ha ha ha. Maybe the audience just kind of thought like, well, they've got to know what they're doing because it's on television. Like if it's on TV, it must be okay because somebody approved it. And what we're learning in this documentary is not necessarily. And that takes us, to another place. Once again, I'll just spitball in here. But things like, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And the new thing, it's not so much, there's sex perversion, but also fighting. We have all these videos of people fighting in fast food restaurants and street yards, and this footage of people getting assaulted. And here's my worst type of asshole is the fucks that go around and videotape themselves or have a friend videotape them punching a complete stranger as a prank. I mean, every asshole like that needs to go to jail and meet Bubba, okay? And we don't talk about Bubba enough, but Bubba used to be this guy in the 80s and 90s that was basically referenced as the chief sodomizer in charge at your local prison. So no matter what prison you went to, there was Big Bubba waiting for you to drop the soap in the shower so he could teach you a lesson. Anyway, I don't know. I mean, it's just a horrible, god-awful situation. Going back to the blame game, yes, Schneider is A1 guilty party, but also I would say the other co-conspirators are the parents of the children. Obviously, they enjoy the financial gain of all this. When I think, and I'm wondering if say I've only watched part 1, folks, so if I'm missing part of the story, watch my follow-up videos if you don't mind, because maybe I'll have more wonderful thoughts. But the part in this documentary in part 1 where they're talking about Bynes going off for hours on end with Schneider, I believe that was a part of it. What the fuck? I mean, where are the parents for that? And I think what happens with some of these, once again, it's kind of like, well, if Schneider works for Nickelodeon, he must be okay. If he's getting all our kids rich, he must be okay. Somebody must have vetted this guy. And as the female writers so poignantly point out at the end of episode 1, once he did have this claim and this out-of-court settlement, I believe, is what happened, he still got away with all this shit because this was just his first show. And I think that female writer, whoever her name was, I can't recall, what a wonderful point she made. What an insightful point. Like, this was his very first show. He's already got a sexual, case against him here, a settlement. And no one stopped him, or no one stepped in, or there was no red flags or even yellow flags, or just, hey, keep an eye on this asshole. I mean, was he so fucking talented that he was the only one that could produce these shows? I mean, that's what we're being led to believe. So this Nickelodeon network, I guess in a way, like going back to what I said earlier, I guess you can't really blame them for not wanting to be involved in this doc, because what the fuck can they say to defend themselves? They, of all the fucking people in the world, they couldn't find another guy to produce this television. I think a lot of people, when they think of kids' TV, they basically think of PBS, Sesame Street, The Electric Company, and something like Nickelodeon. I don't think it was ahead of its time. I think it was a timely thing. But I guess the world or the critics or the authorities or whoever the fucks were just not ready to engage with it on a serious level and protect these children, okay? So when we see a guy like Corey Feldman come out, and yes, he's kind of all over the place at times, but when I do respect Corey Feldman's message a lot of times when he's telling these anecdotes of horror from the film and television worlds that he experienced, I think people need to respect a guy like that a little bit more. And, there's footage from The View and other things where Barbara Walters is kind of, disregarding Corey Feldman. I mean, that footage is 10 or 15 years old, and it's sad. You know, I remember during the pandemic era, I believe Corey Feldman had some doc that he said was going to rip the roof off everything, and I think he was claiming Charlie Sheen involvement with his buddy Corey Haim from the movie Lucas. I didn't get to see Corey Feldman's doc. I've heard mixed things about it. I think there was even like the night that he premiered it in Los Angeles or whatever, there was technical difficulties, so who knows? I mean, I guess I would like to see that doc. If anyone knows where or how I can see it, I would like to watch it. And this stuff makes me reflect upon my own life, fine folks, because as you know, I consider myself a pretty talented actor. I put a lot of work into my acting. I haven't done as much acting on a big time level as I'd like, but you know, you watch Seduction of Distance on One Man and a Camera Films, and I'll put my goddamn acting against anybody, okay? So when I see these corrupt stories, and I think upon my own life, what if I had been born, you know, in Hollywood? What if I was born a Barrymore or whatnot? But then I say, well, gee, maybe I was lucky not to, because you have all these sickos and weirdos doing things to kids and so forth. Would I have been a victim of some of these god-awful situations? I listened to Rick Schroder. Do you mind, Bird? I listened to this Rick Schroder interview the other day. He was on a nice podcast that I listened to, the Iron Council podcast, Ryan something or other. And he was basically, Ricky Schroder was talking some pretty hardcore stuff. Rick Schroder, you might remember from Lonesome Dove, Silver Spoons, and other wonderful projects. He actually did a nice movie with Brad Pitt once upon a time. But Rick Schroder was talking about how he thought he was being examined as a child by some pretty creepy people, and he basically felt like he was what he calls an asset, like he was a pre-programmed minion for some pretty dark forces. So you had to listen to that interview. Ryan Schiffler, I think, or Meckler, or some such thing. The Iron Council, the Iron of Man, the Council of Man, some such podcast with Rick Schroder just came out. Why am I plugging this asshole? They're not plugging me, by the way. Anyway, fine folks, it's your buddy Mike Messier. So I watched part one. Those are my initial thoughts. That's Mike's instant doc review. I'm sure a lot of you binge watched this. You put it on and you couldn't stop it. I started watching the episode at like basically 3:30 in the morning, and you know, and then it was just crazy. And I feel really bad for those people affected. And you know, it's interesting that those two women, young women at the time, Amanda Bynes, if I'm not mistaken, she kind of went off the deep end. I mean, I remember seeing, I believe, footage of her in a courtroom. I'm not sure where she's at now. From what I heard, what I think I heard was that she had psychiatric issues. I don't know if there was homelessness involved or crime involved. But I mean, if you put two and two together, you kind of think that was she, you know, and maybe that's where the doc is headed. Was she the victim of further abuse from Schneider? Or I guess in the first part, they really didn't uncover any abuse that she suffered, but maybe that'll go there. And like this, what's the guy's name? Kay Peele, like one of the guy that's been on Saturday Night Live for 20 years. Apparently he was on one of these shows, All That type of thing, if that's that or All That. And has he ever made a statement? I mean, he seems to have landed pretty well. He's doing quite well for himself. He's had consistent, high-paying work for 20 years. So where's his statement? I guess the Twitter people were asking, where's Ariana Grande? And then they had that other lady, you know, the Jean McGurdy, whatever. She's got the book titled "I'm Glad My Mother's Dead," which is, you know, a bit offensive. But I mean, I read the bio of that book, or the little blurb of it, and I see why she says that. And I'm teetering on getting her audio book, okay? But I did listen to the Britney Spears book, audio book. I don't know if I can handle another, you know, person griping about their childhood. But people were kind of Twitter debating, is this Gene McGurtney, just dropping Ariana's name to get likes and re-clicks and so forth. However, there's footage here of the young Ariana Grande, who I really know not much about, in this documentary doing this stuff that apparently was broadcast on worldwide television. So, apparently she is part of the story, whether she likes it or not. That's the tough thing, folks, about the film industry. So many tough things. One thing is you can't. I'll just give you the heads up, okay? You ready? If you're trying to get into the film industry as an actor, writer, whatever the fuck, a lot of times you can't do any of this stuff on your own for the most part. If you're an actor, you're going to have to work with other actors, directors, producers, crew members. There could be one person on that crew which you as the individual actor or crew member did not hire. There could be one person on that crew that's a creep, that's a criminal, that's a weirdo, whatever you want to call it. And how does the individual monitor or control everyone you work with? That's like saying, well, I live in the state of Florida. Am I supposed to monitor the 2 million other people in this state or whatever it is? Am I supposed to monitor which one's a creep? And you can't. So the guilt by association thing is unfortunate for the majority of the people that are hardworking and clean and sober and doing the right thing. So these don't think that all of Hollywood is this corrupt show or all of filmmaking or TV making. But yes, there does seem to be a percentage that are a bunch of creeps. So anyway, that's it, folks. I'm going to watch part 2, 3, and 4. If anything I said in this Mike's Instant Doc review offended you, or if you have a differing opinion, you can leave it in the comment. I hope I didn't say anything that was incorrect factually. If I did, I hope I corrected myself or whatever the fuck. But once again, it's just shocking. It's sad. I feel bad for all these people involved and the ones that were the victims anyway. And for the Schneider individual, I am very curious. That's why I'll watch parts 2, 3, and 4 before I spoil it for myself, and I will find out, did this individual ever face any type of jury or any type of police activity beyond what we heard in part 1. So anyway, folks, that's it. Your buddy Mike Messier. If you want to see my fine films, One Man and a Camera Films, my artwork, my visual artwork, everyone's so excited about. One Artist, Mike Messier. My pro wrestling rants are on One Pro Wrestling and Sports Fan. And my film reviews are on One Mike Messier. Talk to you later. Go to my